Hi folks, day 3 out of 90, and in this video going to be unpacking the philosophy behind a saying by Walt Disney that I learned a long time ago, that he basically said, look around and see what the world is doing and don't do it. And what that means is that we get influenced because of what we see the majority doing, or we look at businesses that we believe are successful. And so we think that if we do what they do, we'll be successful. But most seemingly successful businesses, if you scratch the surface, it's a house of cards. It could fall over any moment. So we've got to not necessarily just look at these surface level things. We've got to dive deep into the principles of what creates real and long-lasting success. And you would have to agree that Walt was a fairly reasonable, successful snoozer. And that was what he believed. You needed not necessarily to disrupt, but don't follow the majority. If we follow the majority with what I would call generally accepted practices, and we're going to use the term GAPS, generally accepted practices, for relationships, your relationship's probably doomed for failure, because the divorce rate and separation rate in relationships is consistently climbing. If we use the generally accepted practices or GAPS of the majority of people about how they think about and how they deal with money, the majority are way behind on any sort of financial security. They have lots and lots of debt, and they don't have money in the bank, and their net worth is significantly low when you have a look at their debts and what they've borrowed and what their assets are worth and so forth. Lots of credit card debt. If you look at businesses and you measure profit the way that Mike Michalowicz suggests that we measure profit in his book Profit First, which is something that I have subscribed to since the book was published, the majority of small businesses do not make any profit. It says so on your profit and loss sheet, but the Profit First system measures profit by measuring the cash that is in a bank or a shoebox or under your bed or in a tin in the backyard. But that cash, everything's paid for in the business, and this cash that actually exists is not required to pay any bills or anything at all. It's there for the business owner to be rewarded for their risk and their effort and their sacrifice and everything that it takes to run a business. If you measure it that way, the big majority of small businesses are not making profit. All that to say that if we look around and we do what everybody else is doing, we're going to get what everybody else is getting. And so we need to look at the GAPS or the generally accepted practices and make sure that we're not doing those, and we need to replace them with what we're going to call get-on base activities. And this comes from the movie Moneyball, which is currently the basis of this whole new approach that we've created called Mastery and the Moneyball Method. And there's so many really cool principles that come from this movie. And I get that the movie is a Hollywood version of what happened in the early 2000s with the Oakland Athletics baseball team. And some of the people in the movie were fictitious characters, but many of them weren't. And that's beside the point. The principles are there for us to learn from. And so if you've ever seen the movie, it starts off by, doesn't start off, but early in the movie, a guy by the name of Peter Brand, who was a fictitious character. The real character was based on Paul D something. Paul D something. I'll get his name right in future videos. I watched the video of him talking with Bill James just this morning, so I should remember his name. But anyway, Peter, the fictitious character, is telling Billy Beane, who's a real character, who's the general manager of the Oakland Athletics, in private, because he doesn't want to talk about it in front of other people, because the majority of the people think that this process, this philosophy is crazy. Their approach is, he calls it fundamentally flawed. He basically says it's rife through the whole baseball community that they are spending these millions of dollars buying players. And he said that is crazy. They're paying so much for players. The scouts are using this sort of gut feel as to whether somebody is going to be good or not. And when you start to get into the statistics of how often they're right and how often they're wrong, they are wrong nearly all of the time. Something 1 out of every 50 players they select ends up being reasonable. The rest don't even make it into the big leagues. And so these clubs are paying money for potential rather than the Moneyball method, where they are looking at what is the performance statistic, because there's lots of performance statistics, or many of them don't matter, but there are some that really make a difference. And the one that they look at in the movie, for the most part, is called get on base. So what is the percentage of every time a batter comes to bat, what is the percentage that they get on base? And they keep these statistics. The reason that getting on base in baseball is really important is because when you're in the field and you've got a pitcher and you've got fielders out there, you cannot score. Only the batting team can score. And so when you're fielding, your purpose is to get 3 batsmen out so you can now have a turn at bat. And what they're asked to do by the major baseball clubs is to try and hit a home run, to smack the ball and take as many bases as possible. But that's not what they're looking for with this statistic of getting on base. They just want to reduce the risk of getting out to its absolute minimum possible so they can get that batsman on base. And if you think about it, if instead of taking high risks to try and hit the cover off the ball or do something spectacular, all you're trying to do is get on base, and it doesn't matter how you get on base, because you can either hit the ball and get on base, or you can be patient and allow the pitcher to make mistakes, so you end up with what they call 4 balls, or what's called a ball, so it's kind of like a ball that wasn't in the strike zone. And if you get 4 of those, you get to walk to first base and you can't get out. And what I didn't realize as I was watching this, and it took me reading Michael Lewis's book, Moneyball, to really understand this, was that the real key to this is if you're on base, the one thing that can't happen is you can't get out. And if you've got a number of players who understand this process and have the ability to be patient and not be legends and not try and be spectacular and hit it into the 6th row of the crowd with a high failure rate percentage when you're trying to do that, you get the first guy on base. And then if the second guy can do that as well, if there's a high percentage chance of the second guy gets on first base, well, then the person first goes to second, and so forth until they get home. And you start to score runs without getting out because you're taking the safe way. And so you need to look at the statistics and find out what is the behavior, what are the actions that gives you the greatest chance of succeeding. And so I'm going to call that the get on base activity. And so we've got to do 2 things. We've got to look at the generally accepted practice, and then we look at the get on base activity. Now, there's something that we teach in our Blueprint program, which is our entry-level program, and it's called a personal success ritual. And what it does is it prepares your mind to be able to create a better plan for the day, a higher quality plan for the day, to make better decisions, to prioritize things so effectively that at the end of the day, you will have accomplished the really high leverage, important activities instead of running around like a blue-ass fly and not feeling this sense of accomplishment at the end of the day because you've done a million things, but I still don't feel like I've achieved anything. If you apply this method effectively, you will feel far more in control and you'll get significantly more done. And so that is a get-on base activity. But the generally accepted practice with this, and I have taught this for a long time, is people begin to use it. And when they begin to use it, they go, this is fantastic. It made such a difference to how I feel, my energy through the day. I'm getting so much more done. I feel so clear. And they rave about it. And then they continue to do it for a little while. And then they start to phone it in. They don't do it effectively, or they don't do it at all because I'm a bit busy. I got a concrete pour this morning, so I didn't do it. And they start to not do it, or they start to do a half-assed version of it because the disciplined way that they've been taught to do it isn't suiting them anymore. It's uncomfortable. And what we find is that I'm working on a problem with them at some stage down the track, and we do a forensic deep dive into the cause of this problem that they want fixed, and we find out that they haven't been implementing the fundamental activities, the get on base activities, because they're boring. And that's something I'm going to do a whole video on in this 90-day challenge, is the activities that will give you success in any area of your life are boring. And we need to be good with that. We need to understand that the successful activities will feel like they're boring. So it's not exciting. And so these on-base activities don't get done. Look at our problems. We've got to identify exactly what the problem is. And I'm going to do another video on that also, because that is absolutely worth unpacking. Once we find out what the exact problem is, we can put a process in place to fix it. But that's a conversation for another video. Today, I just want to help you to understand that there are get-on-base activities, probably boring activities, probably activities you need to be disciplined to, and they're a bit uncomfortable and that sort of thing. So we tend not to do them, but they are the get-on-base activities. The majority of people, they do the generally accepted practice, and that doesn't work. At least it doesn't work long-term. It may give you some short-term success, but it absolutely is not long-term. So we'll be talking more and more about this. I've got 90 videos to create, and this is only video 3. So we'll be getting into the depths. We'll be getting into the weeds with these concepts. Make sure you keep watching these videos. Perhaps let's connect on LinkedIn. If this is making sense to you, if you feel like you would like to get into a discussion and dive a little bit deeper with these principles, if it's resonating with you, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. All you need to do is reach out to me through LinkedIn, and I can send you a link, and we can organise to have a chat and unpack where you want to go and how these ideas might be able to help. There's nothing to sell. There's nothing to buy. It's just a conversation, because I really want to start to build a group of people that really understand these principles of mastery and the Moneyball Method, and we can build a community that will help each other. Like a peloton in a bike race, we can all move faster and further with less energy if we help each other and ride in a group, so to speak. Hope this made sense. Yes, it's a rant. That's the whole idea of me getting this out of my head and getting it into some content, is this helps me distill the essence of the message and be better at explaining it and helping people understand it and implement it. So apologies for the rant. I'm just getting it all out of my head, creating the content, and it'll all be for a benefit, I'm sure. I'll talk to you in the next video, day 4. It'll be coming up tomorrow. See you then. Bye for now.